Hey y'all, I'm Brian Gunter. I'm a composer for media, and a short time ago I got a little bit curious to see if I could produce a high-level sounding score using only free software. Not trials, but just freely available software anybody can download and use. And I was really surprised with the results. So I posted the video of the completed score mixed back in with the short film. I'll link that below. So I'm going to walk you through the session, take you track by track, piece by piece. I'll show you absolutely everything that I used to make up this composition and score this short film. You'll see everything that I'm using is 100% free. They're not limited time trials. They're just download them and use them as long as you want. You can use them in all your own productions. So if you've got a computer, it doesn't matter what your genre is, you can just download, start making music, even on an off-the-shelf computer. So to that end, I do want to say one thing. I do have a really robust computer that I use for scoring films. And so I'm going to show you something here as we get started on how I limited myself just a little bit further to make this a more fair comparison, right? So let's take a look. So what I'm using for the DAW, this is a waveform free. It's from Traction. And this is a really robust DAW, especially for free. I was really surprised by the flexibility here. But what I want to show you first is I got into the settings, and in advanced, under performance tab, you can select how many cores you're using. Now, normally I could drag this out, and if I wanted to have waveform use all 32 super high speed cores on my system, but I wanted to keep that low. So I'm only using 4 threads out of 32. And keeping that pretty simple. So the other thing that I did was I wanted to limit myself as much as possible with RAM. So I'm only using just a little over 16 gigs of RAM on this. So that may not be enough. A lot of off-the-shelf computers are going to have 8 or 16 gigs of RAM. But with that said, you can freeze tracks. So what that does is that'll take everything out of RAM for that track. So once you've recorded something in or played something in on a MIDI track, you can freeze that track and it'll take all the processing strain, all of the RAM out of your system, and you can kind of hit below that mark for your computer. So if you have only 8 or 16 gigs of RAM, not a big deal. You just freeze tracks as you go. All right, so starting the very top of the session here, we're looking at waveform free. On the left-hand side, we've got some utility going on. I like to have this marker window open so I can easily get around my session as I go through, because that's one of the first things I do is I go through and I set all of these markers like up here at the top. Right, and these are key points in the film I want to make sure that I hit and I accent right. It helps me set the timing and the tempo for everything as I'm going through. So then there's also the tempo map, and this is just a master output. So I don't really have anything going on with the master output because down below, you can also see the video track here, but I've got this folder. I'm just calling it the dub mix because this is the 3 basic elements of sound in the film. The dialogue, which is mostly just human voices and grunts and stuff like that. There's no actual spoken word dialogue in this, but it's still a dialogue track. Then all of the sound effects tracks, and then the 2-track is my music master, my score master stereo track, right? So that's everything down below that I'm composing with goes into the 2-track, and I've got that mixed in a final mix in the dub mix. So then below that, I would have all my effects. I didn't use any like global delays. So if there's any delay, it's on the individual tracks on this one, but there's some global room and longer reverb sounds. Uses a very specific reverb for percussion. So each of these here we're looking at is, I've got a Tal Reverb 2, and I do believe that Tal Reverb 4 is out and available for free to download. So that'll be linked in the resources as well. In this guy, this is a Muse Effects. This is one knob. It's got several different presets for it, but really nice, simple. I've just got it set to a nice big long reverb. This is a built-in reverb from Waveform from Traction. So that just comes with the DAW. Nice little room reverb sound. I can use that for a general hall. Valhalla super massive. Okay, so just, time out. If you have not heard of Valhalla DSP, go check out valhalladsp.com. It'll be linked, but they have some incredible sounding reverbs and other plugins that are, in general, super inexpensive. But the Valhalla Supermassive is 100% free, and it is absolutely bonkers what you can do with this thing. So you'll see more on that later, but go check out Valhalla DSP after you finish the video. So I've got Supermassive on that one, and I've got another Supermassive down here. A little bit different settings on this one, make it sound a little bit more like a chamber, which I would see a little bit more with percussion. So that's my percussion verb on that. So down below, I've got all my stem tracks. So these are individual groups. These are all my different instruments for full orchestral ensembles. And on this one, I'm using Vienna Synchron Player. That's something you can download for free. It's the Big Bang Orchestra. More Synchron Player here. This is going to be Swells, Tutti Hits. So it's just a variety of like full orchestra, very kind of percussive hits. And then I did a custom brass swell. I'll show you that one here as we go through the session. Some bombastic basses. This one is the Free Orchestra from Project Sam. Really excellent. They have 2 volumes out for their Free Orchestra. Some really cool sounds based on their more comprehensive library collections. Very, very, very cool. And then here's another one here from Project Sam. This one is Ghostly Clusters. So there's a variety of sounds in there. We've got high strings here. I'm using some stuff from Struts of Sampling. More on that later. And I've got this one from the Free Orchestra as well. Really nice sounding Sordino strings, so muted sounding strings. BBC SO Discover from Spitfire Audio. Down here on some of the individual high strings. You see a lot of the same on the low strings here, but on this one, I've got the Orchestral Tools A5 Cellis. It's a little bit of a smaller sounding cello section I'm using a little bit later to go with the Stretsov strings, which are very small groups as well. Same with the basses, BBC SO. So I've got a couple different versions of strings, longs for the lows, and then here's all my string shorts. Short strings from the Free Orchestra, Project Sam. The short strings for the Project Sam are very roomy sounding, so you get a lot of that room reverb. And I'm blending that in with both the BBC Symphony Orchestra. This is more body to it, but it doesn't have any round robins. So if you play a bunch of short notes back to back, it's very mechanical, very machine gunny kind of a sound. So I tend to blend those in. And I'm blending those with the Project Sam, also blending them in with the Orchestral Tools, right? And that is whole string ensemble spiccatos. And this one is really nice, very present, has a really good bite to it. So kind of blending all of these together. The brass, most of my brass sound in this is actually coming from the Big Bang Orchestra full ensemble patches. This particular track, though, it is Sign Player Brass Ensemble Sustains. Again, it's from the Berlin Free Orchestra. That one's pretty new. It came out, but it's just a really nice sounding brass. It wasn't too punchy and aggressive, but I'll show you a little bit more on that as we go through. For woodwinds, got a Vienna Synchron Player. It has a really cool, dramatic, Japanese sounding flute that is really kind of gives a unique moment in the short film. And then below that, I've got some Free Orchestra, Wild Winds. So it's got some very unique effects that go to it from the Wild Winds. And then as we go down, I've got some tracks, BBC SO, piccolo flute, flutes, longs and shorts of all of these oboes, clarinets, and bassoons, all longs and shorts on those. These are all BBC Discover. My high percussion, right? We've got snare ensemble from Orchestral Tools. I've got the trash ensemble from the Dynamo. That's this guy right here. It's metal sounding instruments. And Free Orchestra. I've got their Power Strike on this one. I think I'm pulling mostly kind of toms, higher toms, and maybe some snares out of that one. The free orchestra lineage percussion. All right, so this one's, we've got some various mallets. And so down here in the low percussion, layering in various heavy, low, boomy kind of percussive sounds. Again, from Sign Players, the kick drum ensemble. This one also from Dynamo, their Grand Casas, the big orchestral bass drum. And each of these I'm layering them in because they each have strengths and weaknesses, so you blend them together to get the overall feeling that you want. Again, there's some more power strike. I'm using some more low end, keeping them all separate in their own categories so I can process those particular sections as needed. And tune percussion, I have a timpani sample coming from the Sforzando. I really like the single hits from Orchestral Tools or the BBCSO. I think I like the overall sound a bit better, but neither one of those demo libraries had timpani rolls. So I think I got a pretty good sound out of this Sforzando instrument here. Definitely a little bit different in how it accesses the samples and things like that. So I don't know a ton about this one in particular, but the only thing I'm using it on is the timpani for the timpani rolls, things like that. So below that, I've got some drum kits. I've got Urban Beats, right? Using this in a couple of tracks here across the drums. I've got some separate snare tracks and hi-hats, kick drum tracks out here that I'm all processing a little bit separately. We'll hear those as we go through. When we get down into the synthesizer tracks, we've got high pulses, got some synths, heavily used Yuhi's free synthesizers on here. They're just incredible. So thank you, Yuhi, for providing these for people to get started on. This is the Podolsky, and this one's great. It's got this built-in arpeggiator, so you'll see where that comes in a little bit. The Triple Cheese, this one's a lot of fun, and also the Tyrell N6, really awesome analog sounding synth, and got some great presets. And then we're using the Zebra LED. I just call this my baby Zebra. So baby Zebra is kind of the junior version of their full Zebra synth package, all based on modular synthesis. Really, really, really great stuff. Famous for being used by Hans Zimmer, but this is kind of the junior version of that. So it's my Zebra LED, my baby Zebra. All four of those are from Yuhi. I'm also using Attractive. It comes with the waveform free. Well, what I like about this is I can resize the window, and you see it's got this XY pad in here to modulate all the different filters in there. So I can drag it down. If you see on this camera, I can drag it down. This is my touch screen, so I can drag my finger around, and it's pretty responsive that way. So that's a really nice plugin to have, but you don't need a touch screen. You can use other controls to modulate the XY pad. So that's Attractive. And then I've got one more synth bass track down here, Synth Strike. This is going into one of the signature sounds here, using this to define this place that we're going to be in as a character. So more on that in a minute. But I'm using Zebra LED synth again for that. And then down below here, we've got choirs. I only use this in one spot, but we've got a couple different choirs. Soprano, alto, tenor, bass are the primary vocals on just the Contact Player free library that comes with it. And then below that, I've also got, just to kind of support those as well, the Jacob Collier Audience Choir just gives a little bit more support underneath. Guitars and world instruments. So here, what I'm using is 3 instruments from Spitfire Labs Plus. All right, so I've got this dulcimer. You can see this dulcimer. It's a free offering from Spitfire Labs. They have some subscription ones that you can get to, but everything that I'm using is from their free offerings. So it's a hammered dulcimer, and this is a mandolin tremolo. And this one is called a monochord. All right, but you can see they're all free. This is a preset called Fever Dream. I'll show you how I'm processing those in a little bit. And here, accents and risers. I don't have a ton of whooshes and risers and things, but I've got a few. This is just a reverse cymbal sample. right? And that's one that I made and just recorded in. So I'll include that into the sample pack. I just put it on its own track and reverse the audio to get the reverse cymbal. I did some of that with the boomers as well. Down here, you'll see these are all of the kind of big sub boomers here. This is actually a sample from the Horizon free sample pack, sub boom number 4. Also got, this is one that I did. So I just call that mellow boomer. Generic hit here. This is something I stacked a bunch of kick drums together, kind of get some different qualities from each one, EQ'd very specifically, and then recorded them in to their own track in waveform, and there you have it. I've got this whoosh hit that's also from the Horizon, and then down here, this is a downer. So it's big. It's your bass drop. That's all of the tracks. Okay, so we'll go through these in a little bit more depth as we look through the session, but that's what we're using here on that for instruments. All right, so we'll go scene by scene here. There's just a few of them. It's a short film, so we'll just show you how I'm using each of these instruments and what effects plugins that I'm using on each of these tracks. So I'm starting down here with the dulcimer, the mandolin, monochord. I've got one low boomer that happens at the end of the scene, and those are kind of supplemented in here too. That right there at the very end, got the Zebralet synth, kind of in transition to the next section with those boomers. We open on this frame. We're in this kind of dingy little shack in a shanty town. Looks like we've got some futuristic stuff going on, but it's real rusty and run down and operating by candlelight. So I wanted to kind of give this, very organic, kind of give it this vibe. And I've got the Labs dulcimer leads us off. And on that dulcimer, I've got a little bit of compression, just kind of brings it up since it's a featured solo instrument. Little bit of EQ, very small EQ moves, right? We're talking like not even 2 dB. Little movements here to kind of shape that into the whole mix. I'm sending that to the room reverb that I showed you before. And that's also going a little bit to the long reverb. So I'm just using a little bit of each. This sounds like this. This ends up being the main theme. This is the old man's theme. So you'll hear this come back later. It's just nice and simple. It's a really nice sound. And then below that, we've got our mandolin tremolo. And that's got the M auto pan. So that's just providing a little bit of movement back and forth in the stereo image. I didn't want to compose something really dense here, but it's nice to have some movement. So that's what the M auto pan is doing. This is from Melda Productions. Definitely check out their free bundle. They've got a ton of useful stuff that I use all the time, like this M auto pan in my regular composing work. So with the M auto pan doing that, got a little bit of the Ozone 11 equalizer, great all-around equalizer. Again, just doing small moves, right? Sending that to the room, same room as the dulcimer. The Valhalla Supermassive, doing something a little bit unique with that. I've got a more in-depth video that I did on my channel, so when you're done watching this, go check it out. It's called How I Use Reverb Wrong, but it's how I use to bridge this kind of very organic, folky kind of sound with the futuristic sound that comes through in the next scene. And as we're kind of seeing the technology that's there, it kind of bridges those two things together by using this in a very different way than you would normally use it, but it's on the mandolin, so it's all coming from that organic place. This is what the mandolin sounds like by itself. Here, moving back and forth. Okay. That guy, and then we've got the monochord. And that's also from Labs. And I've got this compressor on it from Tokyo Dawn Recordings. It used to be Tokyo Dawn Labs. They got some great mastering plugins. I really, really like this stuff, especially the Nova. I'll show you that as well later. But I use the Molotov a lot here on the individual tracks, even though it's kind of a bus compressor is kind of the original idea. But I use it a lot on their tracks to really kind of smash down the intrusive stuff, but keep the attack really well and present. And so it can get some nice aggressive sounds without being too intrusive to the rest of the score. Like in between the monochord instrument plugin and the Molotov compressor, so I've got this little patch bay plugin. This is a native plugin to waveform, and I'm just reversing the left and right because the way the monochord samples work, it starts on one side and kind of goes to the other with the way it's set up, and I wanted to reverse that based on what I had going on with the mandolin and the dulcimer. So I've just got the output from monochord, right? The left side goes to the right of the compressor, the right side goes to the left of the compressor. And then, of course, some more Valhalla Supermassive. It's dope. All right, so here is the monochord with the Fever Dream preset. And using that to accent a couple of smaller spots, but it gives leaving a lot of space here. And you see right down here, we've got the sub boom from Horizon sounding like this. All right, so that starts right there and goes into the next scene, but that is being supported by our friend up here on the bass strike track, right? This is a Zebralet synth. And I've got some different automation going on, but I've got some very specific EQ moves here. I'm really, really zeroing in on some very specific frequencies as this is going. Got a little bit of a limiter on there just to kind of keep control over the peaks. And this is going to a dedicated effects track for the Zebralet. A little bit of EQ from Ozone again. And then down here on the effects, got some more EQ on just the effects. So I'm highlighting exactly what I want. Supermassive. And I was using an Ozone here, but I've got that turned off at the moment. So here's what this Zebralet bass strike sounds like. All right, so you've heard all the individual tracks. So let's play that scene back and you can get a whole sense of what's going on here. All right, so that's that whole first scene. So this next bit is kind of ramping up the stakes. He's breaking into this high-tech facility. So I wanted to kind of give it that spy cloak and dagger vibe to it, but really give it a lot of energy. So I've got a lot of synths and stuff going on with this, blending it in with more of the orchestra. So I'll show you what this is doing. So we've got the sub boom, got this whoosh hit that's also from the Horizon. And you'll see this bass strike happen again here towards the end of this scene. And we've got some low pulses. This first one here is the Podolsky. And I'll show you this sounds like. All right, so that's our Podolsky. It's this guy right here. I've got a little bit of EQ, just cutting the low end off of it. Not too much of the low mids, but a little bit here where it's getting muddy, and I really want to just have it poking through the mix. But it's got the arpeggiator going on it, as you can see. Going right there. So that's great stuff. And then there's a little bit more M-Auto pan on that one. A little bit different setup than on the mandolin. And so a little bit more Ozone 11 and a little bit of compressor too, just to keep that nice and present and aggressive. And then above this, got some high pulse synths. And we'll start here. There's another Podolsky. Again, EQ, taking some of that low muddy stuff out that I just don't need. I want it poking through, accentuating what I want in the EQ there. And that's all that's going on with this track. It sounds like this. Using the mod wheel to modulate that in and out. All right, so there's that sound. And then we've got also yoo-hee, triple cheese. Got a little bit of a chorus on that to kind of whiten it out. It's giving it a little bit more of a wide breadth on the stereo image. And again, EQ, I'm just accentuating the stuff that I want and pulling down the stuff that I don't want. And this looks like a bigger move than it is. But really, if I zoom that back out, looking at not even 2 dB, just barely more than 2 decibels on the EQ move. So I'm not doing anything drastic, all right? But this was what the triple cheese sounds like. A pitch bend going on with it for the CC. I'm detuning this right here. See this guy? Detuning it there. All right, so you can go in and just assign any of these to any automation CC that you want. Very, very cool stuff. Very easy to work with and do, and it sounds great. One more plugin down here, one more instrument. This is the Terrell N6. Great sounding analog synth. Sounds like this. I'm just using the very top end of this. I've got it all cut off, and I'm taking it. This was really piercingly painful spots. That's why this 4,000 hertz is pulled down so aggressively. It's just a little bit of texture, right? A little bit of texture going on. So above that, you're going to see the short strings I showed you earlier. These are the ones that are all blended in together from different libraries. There's these BBC SOs that sound okay, but they're a little bit dull. They have a really good body to them, but they sound just a little bit dull by themselves. This is the Helix string ensemble. It's much brighter, not super aggressive yet either. And then this is the free orchestra strings. You can see these are not super aggressive, but they're very roomy sounding. So you have all those short strings blended in together, and then this was that brass I was showing you earlier. It's this guy here, the brass ensemble sustains. A little bit of EQ. Another EQ, taking off some of the low mud out of here, accentuating the highs. Just giving it a little bit more attack with a VCA compressor. This is from Softtube. This is really good for kind of bringing out a much more aggressive sound with something. So here, I'll play this. So this is without the compressor. So it sounds okay, but here's with the compressor. So without compressor. With the compressor. Right, way more aggressive and upfront and in your face. So that's what we've got. So everything else you've seen already. So this is what that whole scene comes together to sound like. then I just have it pulls back here on the music just for a moment. Let the viewer kind of breathe. You can't be constant all the way through, or else you just get fatigued. So, and we're about to have a much more intense battle happen. So I wanted to give everybody a little bit of a break. Just kind of let this unfold. So going into the fight scene, right, we've got more of these boomers down here. Got this low pulse. I mentioned that attractive before. So that's this guy. And we've got that Molotov compressor going on. It's just controlling some things. I've got a whole bunch of that low end that's muddying up the rest of the mix. Pulled back. Solo that up. All right, and you can hear the string patch was not muted there, but that's all right. Free orchestra, Sordino violins, right? That's this guy from Project Sam. So we had the attractive, playing some low, pulsing rhythms, really kind of ramping up the action. We've got some more zebralet happening here. Just got it coming in, hitting a couple of accents as it goes through the scene, so it's not super prominent, but just giving a little bit of texture that pokes through now and then. And we've got some drum kits going on. There was some of those urban beats in the previous scene, but this is some of the more expanded drums I've got going on. I figured nice big fight scenes like a dance, so let's get a little bit of a beat going on with them. Nothing too major, but just something fun, I thought. Tune percussion is going to come in a little bit. That is the timpani I had mentioned before. And then low percussion, all of this stuff, the dynamos, right? Just a little bit more ozone EQ, sending to the percussion reverb. And that's really what's going on all of these. So I'm not going to dive too deep in because they're very, very similar processing on each one of these tracks. So I'll let you look at that. You can download the resource pack I've got for this and see for yourself how that's all going in detail. Dynamo Trash. So it's a lot of what's going on there. It is being supplemented by the 2D orchestra patches up above, so I'll get into that momentarily. I've got the Woodwind Tracks. This is the BBC SO stuff, and then towards middle of this little section here, towards the end of the little section rather, you'll hear the Wild Winds and the Fujara flute. Those are all the BBC Symphony Orchestra EQ happening. Again, nothing huge, taking a little bit out here and there that just was building up too much. All right, so you started to hear some of the strings going on here. All right, so when we run back, you can hear what the short strings are doing. You hear a lot of this is kind of mimicking and supporting the winds. So that's what's going on there in the strings and some of these high strings. All right, so the big ensemble sections here, you can see a couple of different things going on. Some of the BBO, the Big Bang Orchestra longs, and just a little bit of EQ going on in this. Really great sound. These swells. The free orchestra again. Those are the big tutti hits. Ghostly clusters. That's a big one happening right here. Providing a lot of kind of pre-orchestrated vibes. Toward the end, we've got these bombastic basses. All right, and yeah, I promised I'd talk about this one a little bit. So this brass swell right here actually came from the libraries, and I re-recorded that into its own track. And you can see on this, I put a pitch shift at the end to bend it down just a little bit. Just bend it down at the end. And then I re-recorded it again. That's why this is disabled. So I re-recorded it again and then into its own track. And then I used a time warp to shorten it all up. Gives exactly the vibe that I want here. So it sounds like this. That was one of these, big swells from one of the other libraries that I modified for my own uses, just right within waveform here. All right, so that's all. Those are all the tracks that are happening in this section. So now that you've heard all the individual pieces, back and we'll play them all together. Start right here. He's trying to take his battery that he wants, and the little robot says no. So that is the whole fight scene right there. All right, so we're moving on to the end of the film. So he's got to get back out of the factory and go home. One thing we see is we get one last look at this whole factory, the aftermath of his battle with the security bot and the destruction. So you'll hear one more time, you'll hear that single note character motif for the factory as he's leaving it. You'll hear the Podolsky synth we started with a little arpeggio, kind of keeping that same anxiety because he's still got to get back home. And then you'll hear the dulcimer come back in with his theme as he's kind of realizing, okay, I've got the battery, got to get out of here. So you'll see that a couple of those themes kind of come back in a little bit here. But no new instruments, right? This is all playing out with stuff that you've heard before into the next scene. And then as he gets home, here's where you're going to see I used the Stretsov violins and kind of really kind of expanding on the old man's theme as it goes into this ending. You kind of see the reveal of, the urgency behind this. It's a really kind of a bittersweet thing. You're relieved for him, but it's also kind of uncomfortable too, seeing, this other thing that's going on, raises more questions. So I wanted it to sound somber. I wanted it to sound like he has some relief, but it's very kind of a more intimate moment, even though I'm expanding on the theme with new instruments. It still needed to have that intimate vibe. So that's where these Stretsov violins come in, because it's a much smaller group, sounds more intimate, and I can go from a half-sized VC group to a fuller group as the cello and the basses come in. So you'll hear all of that as it goes through. Mandolin again. We've reintroduced the theme. All right, so that's it. I think you've seen just about everything here. I think the only thing I may not have shown you is just what the processing chain is on my 2-track. So I'll show you that here real quick. We've got a little bit of the Molotov here. It's just taken off the varying. You can see the threshold is not pulled down very low. We're just taking the tiniest little bit off the top, watching the peaks. So I don't want to compress the dynamics on this at all, really. A little bit of EQ. Again, there's a little bit of boxiness and muddiness that built up, so I wanted to take that out of the overall sound. A little bit of stereo image, keeping that out of the middle, so the sound effects and the voices still come through. I'm trying to keep everything out of the way. All right, and a little limiter here. Really ended up not doing much processing at all, but it's there as a little security blanket. And then the TDR Nova. I mentioned this earlier. TDR Nova is absolutely fantastic. It used to be Tokyo Dawn Labs, now it's Tokyo Dawn Records. But it's a fantastic free plugin, and it's a dynamic EQ. So you can see it looks like a normal EQ with the spectrogram here, but it also has dynamic controls for each of these 4 EQ bands. So it really helps control the extra lows and highs that happen throughout the course. Again, I'm not taking a ton of dynamics out of it. It's a little bit extra control on the end, and it really helps glue everything together. So that's this dynamic EQ, the Nova from TDR. And that's what's up. That's what's going on with the music. That's everything you're hearing. Everything you've seen, everything you've heard comes from free software. If you've got a computer and an internet connection, you can download it today, right? So I've linked in the video description below. I have a resource pack that is available. It's free. You guys can download it, and it has this session in it without the video. The only thing I couldn't do, I can't redistribute the video resources. I don't have permission to do that, but what you're going to have is everything with the music. And if you do want all the video resources, you can go to theqtube.com, right? And you can sign up with them. You can do a subscription for like $15 a month, and you can just download to your heart's content all kinds of videos that they've got like this. It's very, very cool. Or you can do one at a time and make a one-time purchase without doing a subscription. So I downloaded several videos that I could just kind of really explore and, look at the director's notes for them. It was a great resource for self-education and practice and getting more portfolio pieces for myself. So really good stuff. So that's the only thing that won't be in the pack, because I have a license to use it, but I don't have a license to distribute it. But everything else here, you'll have another resource pack with links that you can click on. That'll take you to all of the websites, all the manufacturers that have all of these plugins in. Go ahead, you can download what you want, learn about them, yours to do with whatever you want, okay? If you have any questions at all on anything that you've seen, if you want me to go more in depth on the composing side or anything like that, let me know in the comments. If you just want to, you know, take a look and have a laugh at some of my ridiculous orchestration, everything's fine, all right? It's all good. So just let me know in the comments, and you can check out the other video that goes more in depth on the reverb for the mandolin track, how I used reverb wrong. That'll all be linked here as well. But ultimately, what's the point? The point is, well, I mean, it started out as me getting curious to see how good I could make a score sound using only free stuff. But in the end, it turned out well enough that, you know, I think it just goes to show that you don't need super expensive stuff to get started. It all has its place, and I've got plenty of things that there's a reason to have it. This will get you started, and this will get you working, and it'll sound really good. Use it as a learning tool. Get started. Just play some music. Just make some noise with it and have a good time. That's the point. You don't need to spend $1 million to do this. So with all that said, I just wanted to say thanks again one more time. I hope you got something really positive out of this video. Maybe we'll see you around on the next one. In the meantime, go make some noise.